Alright, let's look at some general principles for right-hand mandolin technique. So what we want to do, remember, is first we want to use the weight of our right hand wrist, okay? I see a lot of beginners hold the pick where I kind of say they're basically putting all the pressure on one finger, usually their index finger. And it works at first because you get a lot of control over the pick because you're really gripping it with two fingers really tight. But the problem with that is when you start playing faster, you're basically putting all that pressure on one finger. What we want to do is turn our hand and basically use the weight of our wrist to play through the notes. We're just going to get a ton more volume and tone with a lot less effort. So what I recommend is kind of put your hand like this, like you're giving a thumbs up, and then put the pick in like that, and then put your thumb down. You can see I've got some of the pick showing, and it doesn't matter if this is rounded or pointed, that's just going to change the tone. You can see that the pick is still able to flop a little bit. So I'm holding it just loose enough that it doesn't fall out of my hand, but I'm not holding it so tight that it can't move. So I'm holding it like that. And basically what I'm doing then is I'm using the weight of my wrist again to push through the notes. And what I want you to look down at your mandolin is when you play the low string, for example, is make sure you're actually hitting both pairs of strings. So it should sound like one note. And you should also be able to see both strings clearly moving. So if each string isn't ringing, that means you didn't hit both of them. So a very common mistake, I know I did this, is I would only hit the top one on the way down, and then I'd hit the lower one on the way up. So I was actually only getting half my volume. So you really want to make sure you play down through both of them, and then up through both of them. And like I said, just look at the string. If you see it moving, then that means you hit it. If you don't see it moving, then that means you didn't hit it. Another thing you can do is called a rest stroke, where you play down and land on the next string. That really forces you to make sure you play both pairs. So I especially recommend it on the up strokes. It's very easy to miss one of the pairs on the ups. Okay, and then you can do the rest stroke backwards as well. Just make sure both of them are moving, okay? So that's the right hand technique you want to use. Keep your wrist really loose. You don't want to be using a lot of forearm. That's going to get you tired really fast. I mean, you can see if you start moving your arm like this, how tired you get. Whereas if you just use the weight of your wrist, you're going to be able to play a lot longer and faster with, again, less effort, which is the goal. The other thing we want to make sure is that we don't have different strumming and picking. We don't want to do a different grip when we're playing notes, then change to a different grip when we're strumming. That's another common beginner mistake I see. You know, a beginner will have good technique when they're strumming, but then when they go to play single notes, they'll change grips or they'll tighten up. What we want to practice is maintaining a very consistent right hand, whether we're strumming or whether we're picking notes. A lot of times you're going to be strumming and then picking some notes and then strumming and picking notes. So you don't want to be changing grips back and forth, or planting when you're playing notes and not planting when you're strumming. I'd really encourage you to develop one consistent right hand motion that you use whether you're picking or strumming. So what we can do is take a basic G scale, so open 2, 4, 5 on the lowest two strings. Those are my frets. Open 2, 4, 5, then open 2, 4, 5 on the next string up. And that's a G major scale. So what you can do is strum some G and then try and do some picking. Doesn't matter which notes you play, you can go up and down the notes. I'm just trying to keep my right hand moving. wanted a slightly more advanced version of that, you could add some other chords. You could add a C and a D. So you could do C, G, D. So just experiment with that. Again, you can stay on the chords for different lengths of time. I'm not worried about what notes I'm playing there. You know, what I'm working on in this exercise is keeping my right hand really consistent. I just want to keep my right hand moving up and down, whether I'm doing the strumming or the picking. The other thing I like to think about is I'm basically always keeping my right hand moving. Even if I'm playing, let's say even if I'm playing one long note, I basically keep my right hand moving, but I'm just not touching the strings. That's going to help me keep the time. You want to resist the urge to be starting and stopping and starting and stopping. A good analogy I think of is, you know, if you see someone running and then they come up to a stoplight and it's a red light and they keep running in place, so then when the light turns green and then they take off. Basically the same thing here. We want to always keep our right hand moving so we're ready to jump in at any time. If we're constantly stopping and starting our right hand, it's just going to be that much more difficult to stay in time. So even if I'm just playing just downs, you can still see my hand is still doing the up motion. I'm just choosing not to hit the strings. So then when I add the ups, all I'm doing is just changing the angle of my hand to now where I actually hit the string. So I'm still doing the same exact motion if I'm doing just the downs. The only difference is now I'm choosing to hit the string or not. So I'm always trying to keep my hand moving, my right hand moving. And that's tough because your right hand's going to want to stop, especially when your left hand starts changing. But what we need to do is keep our right hand really consistent there. So work on the pick grip, work on getting some good tone. So you can also experiment with your right hand position. Obviously further back here is going to be a little harsher tone. Up here is a little sweeter. So keep working on that. You can experiment moving your right hand around to get different sounds as well. But first thing is just getting some really good solid volume out of your instrument and making sure you're hitting both pairs of strings on the down and up. Practicing your pick grip is going to pay off huge dividends later on. Don't develop bad habits at the beginning. You're just going to have to rework those later. You can get away with a lot at first when you're playing slow, but a lot of these habits you're trying to develop so when you play faster or you're playing for longer periods of time, you develop the ability to play fast and stay relaxed, okay? So that's what I want you to work on for this lesson. All right, hopefully that helps you out. All right, good luck.